Hello. Now if you're wondering why I'm down on the ground this time, we're going to take a little follow back video at some of the things we've seen on various heritage railways over the last few years when we've been doing our videos. And one of the subjects I wanted to approach a bit more was the subject of economical point operation. That means driving and locking a point off a single lever. We're very familiar with having a point drive lever and having a facing point lock lever and two separate functions there. But a lot of railway companies did over the time, over the history, standardise them into a single operation. Now we're talking before point motors, so we're talking the single operation of a point, unlocking, drive and relocking of one lever. And there are various variations on this, but this video is going to concentrate on three examples. We're going to have a look at the Princess and Langley point machine, Z-lock point as I call them, or as I grew up with them. We're going to have a look at this machine, which is an EP point machine, and I'll explain the reason for that, because this is the next step up in the evolution of that part point machine, still an economical drive. Finally, I'm going to include in this video an SGE point machine, and the reason for that is very simple. The SGE, whilst it is a complete point machine, it has a separate drive, separate locking function out of the machine. So you could basically deconnect the mechanical side on, say, a weekend job and put a point machine straight in, and it would work the mechanical rodding that used to be there previously. So I've included that because that's another evolutionary step up in the economical operation. I've left other point machines out of this, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Point machines, by their very nature, are economical point machines. They unlock, they drive and they relock in one go. That's fair enough, that's understandable. But I'm looking back at the basics of economical drives, how they came to be, and some of the evolutionary steps up in that. So Princess and Langley to start with. We'll have a look at the Midland Railway Centre, an example there. We'll have a look at this machine here, the EP point machine, the next evolutionary step up in the 1940s, 1950s, and then the SGE point machine, because it is a standalone economical point machine on its own right. And the thing I define that locks these out separate from point machines are two things: central drive shaft, which both the Princess and Langley and the EP machine have. Yes, the SGE machine doesn't have that, it has an escapement, but then this has an escapement, and so does the Princess and Langley. Secondly, a separate detector box, which both the SGE has and this EP point machine, and Princess and Langley has a separate detection. So I hope you enjoy this video. We'll get down and dirty on the ground. Okay, this is a facing point into the sidings at Butterley. It's an eco point, eco obviously because one lever drives both the point and the locking. It's economical. So if you'd like to just show us what we have. We used to call them Princess and Langley's or Z-lock points. So you have a main drive bar that goes all the way through, operated by the lever from the signal box. In the centre of this is a Z-shaped slot, and the main drive bar for the points is sat into that. So the first operation of unlocking the lever has a little bit of lost motion about that long. That just unlocks points. Then the angled notch kicks the point rod over, and finally the last operation of the lever kicks the lock back in again on the lost motion at the end, and detection is driven separately off that being in the right place. The actual locking is performed off these two apertures, one on the left, one on the right, which just catch around the outside blocks. So that's the economical point. Very simple in operation, with a nice hinged lid as well to make life a lot easier for the maintenance man. Now this is an escapement crank for use with mechanical rodding to drive a single-ended set of points and also a facing point lock. And what you have is the main base plate, much like the base plate upon a compensator. However, this base plate actually has some small lugs sat underneath it, which act as a support. It means that your drive rod to your crank can't be a standard drive rod either. otherwise it hits these small lugs underneath. And the purpose of this is very simple. In this one operation, your drive rod comes in on here, it kicks across and then has some escapement action on it, which can then lock the points. That also allows you to unlock, as you can see, unlock the FPL, then kick the points across. This will be the drive to the points. Finally, relock the FPL. Depends on how you design it. Obviously on this one, if you wanted to move the FPL across, you'd have a bit of a problem because you'd have to have it designed so it locks both ways. But as we can see from this example with the Vistiniog Railway, that our colleague has gave to us, this was used very simply to drive a single length set of points on an FPL off one mechanism and one rod. Our next evolutionary step up on the economical point is this machine. This is an EP point machine, an electro-pneumatic point machine. Now, however, this one is configured to work with a hydraulic motor, which was a later adaptation by British Rail in the 1970s, 1980s. And that gave it some extra life, but also some good usage, because if you couple the brand new hydraulic motor that was used on higher clamp lock points with the very basic EP point machine, you have a very sturdy machine that certainly lasts, and there's still examples of this in use today up in the Scottish region. Again, like a Princess and Langley economical point, it has a central drive bar. Off this is an escapement, or a kicking action, that drives the points itself. Everything's kept simple. As a maintainer, you can look straight in and change every single component. Unlike a point machine where everything's tucked in, it's a bit awkward to get in and out. This machine is completely open. You can take the lid off and get straight into it. Everything is visible and the motion is very simple. Again, with the Princess and Langley machine, you have a slight unlocking action to start with, then the drive action of moving the points, and then the locking action. The difference with this machine, it doesn't have the Z-lock notch in the middle of it. They changed the idea very slightly and had a butterfly escapement, which I'll get into in a minute. The next evolution in the economical point is the motorised economical point. This is our example here at Church Lane on Peak Railway. Here what we have is our single drive rod down the centre of the machine that you can see. We have a drive motor at one end, which in this case is a hydraulic ram, and you can use air rams as well. In fact, the machine was configured originally on the West Coast Main Line to work off an air ram, and then we have our separate detector box down at the far end here. The machine is included because, as you can see, there's an economical movement. Everything is driven off this central drive shaft itself. What we have here, we have our main drive bar through the centre. We have our two kicking studs, our single kicking stud here, and this roller engages with an escapement here that we call the butterfly. And the reason we call it a butterfly, two halves shaped like a pair of butterflies' wings, imaginary, and that then drives the point drive to kick the machine over. As you can appreciate, with any economical point, there has to be a bit of lost motion, the same as in a normal point machine. You have to unlock this first, and therefore the first thing that we do is we unlock and drive this drive stud over. Then there's a little bit of motion there where nothing happens until it engages this other armature here and finally kicks that across. Once it's done that, it's driven the points over correctly, the last thing to happen is this drive stud then re-engages behind here and jams that so it locks it solid. So as with an economical point, Princess and Langley point, Z-lock point, once it's locked, it's physically locked. Anything that would run through those points, such as a train going the wrong direction, could do some damage therefore. So with a point machine, whereas you tend to damage more of the rods and a bit of the machine, with a Princess and Langley and with an Economical point, if you have a run through, you can definitely damage the machine, though they are made big and heavy to counteract that. On this machine, the lock is inside the machine. There's no physical 4-foot lock in there. So what we have here, as I mentioned before in other videos, you have two blocks. One is long and fat, the other one is short and thin. As you can see, you have some apertures here on your locking rod, and only the correct lock will engage with the correct one. So for instance, this aperture here will only engage with this notch here. As you can see, this one's already locked in here. I'll just get down in there and show you. There you go. You can see that that one is already engaged in there now, locked. So as the machine goes, this will drive out, and then as the points kick over in the correct location, this rod will come across, and this notch here that I showed you will engage with that block there. So as the machine goes itself, we have the drive mechanism at one end, the economical movement through the middle. Yes, we have an escapement the same as in an SGE machine or in a Princess and Langley. On the Princess and Langley, we obviously have the Z-shaped bar hole in the middle, so you have that unlocking motion, drive across, relock motion. But this is the next evolutionary step up. This is the motor working of the Princess and Langley, basically. These were used all over the West Coast Main Line and quite a few other places, Scotland. There's a couple on Heritage Railways. This is my example. I know the colleagues at the Emsey Bolton Abbey Railway have a couple there at Bolton Abbey, and I'm also aware that there's a few in preservation that haven't been installed yet. I have seen some down at Chasewater Heaths, satin sidings, on an old panel there, and I've also seen some down at Market Bosworth on a panel when you drive into the car park, so maybe they have plans to install them in the future. But they are a pretty rugged machine, very simple. And again, one of the beauties of these machines, yes, if the motor fails, you can handle them. If that completely fails, you can disconnect the pump itself, and you can actually use these holes here for barring. We used to use these when we used to do the gauging. You could bar them over. On the original machines, these had airwork valves, air solenoids there, and what you had is a little brass key you could put in, and you could turn them left to right, and you could blow the points over. So there's about 3 different systems of fail-safe modes on it that you can work it should it fail. You can work it off the motor fails, you can hand pump them. If the hand pump fails, you can still bar them. If that fails, you can disconnect everything, still bar them over anyway. So this is the SGE point machine, one of 2 here at the mainline end of Swanwick Junction. And as you can see, the machine has 2 drives out from it. First drive at the back there actually drives the facing point lock in the middle of the 4-foot. And the second drive out from the side, just there, drives the actual point machine itself. So it's a combined lock and drive point machine. Fairly big and heavy, chunky machine. Motor, incoming contacts just to the left there on the OBA terminal blocks, China OBA terminal blocks. A worm screw escapement in the middle there, and you have the drive contacts there, which they are a flick across system. So they'll decide once it reaches its full extent, they will then flick across and make for the return path to come back. An escapement crank in the middle there that allows for some lost motion, because obviously you want to be able to unlock the facing point lock first before you try and drive the points, otherwise the 2 will jam up. And also, you may have noticed on the end of the lever frame there in Swanwick Junction box was a winding handle. One half it's a winding handle, the other half is a Black's lock, which fits into the lever frame. So when you take the point handle out, it locks the frame up, but allows you to then take the handle down here and insert it in there and wind the handle. And obviously once you've wound the handle, you then need to reset it afterwards, so you've got a small reset pin on the side as well. Lovely machine, nice and simple, and does the job. Finally, and we'll cover this in another video, there is also wire-worked point operation.
mostly used throughout the rest of the world still, but that'll be the subject of one of our next videos.